We are live at Mount Rushmore, everybody. How are you doing? We are moving from Washington State to Florida and decided to stop off here to do a quick live stream about presidential candidate censorship, because where else better to talk about it than Mount Rushmore? A bunch of other presidents that can't say anything. You know what I'm saying? All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is going to show a video real fast of Vivek Ramaswamy. He's running as a Republican. Also, RFK Jr. was editorialized, censored, what you would call it, by mainstream news. I believe was it ABC? ABC. They did a sit-down interview with him and took out basically everything he said about vaccines. But let's listen real fast to this video.
I was a bit surprised to get an email noting that my LinkedIn account had been shut down. I wondered why, because actually a number of friends texted me saying they followed me on LinkedIn. That's how they keep up. They weren't able to find me anymore. And so when I had my team get in touch with LinkedIn, here's the response that we got. I'm not kidding. I'm reading from this. Your account was restricted for sharing content that contains misleading or inaccurate information. They said what it was. One was a video where in the video I said, the CCP is playing the Biden administration like a Chinese mandolin. China has weaponized the woke pandemic to stay one step ahead, and it's working. That was the first offense. The second offense was one where I said that if the climate religion was really about climate change, then they'd be worried about shifting oil production from the US to places like Russia and China. Yet the climate religion and its apostles in the ESG movement have a very different objective. That was my second offense. And apparently my third strike was to say this: the climate agenda is a lie. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Those were my three strikes. That got me censored on LinkedIn. This is staggering. And so then we push back. And what do we say? We actually got specifics on how we're actually, hate speech, misinformation, and violence. Those were the policies that I was actually violating. Now, I got a kick out of this. I'm going to be honest. I'm sure that we're going to get this escalated because I'm a U.S. presidential candidate. We have the connectivity to the people that we need to talk to be able to get my LinkedIn account back. But I'm not bringing this about because it's about me. I'm bringing this up because if they can do it to me, they can really do it to anybody for making statements about the climate change movement and agenda in this country that are grounded in fact, and then express an opinion based on those facts. To make a statement about Biden's relationships with China and criticize his China policies as a result, to say that that's going to be characterized as misinformation, hate speech, and violence per LinkedIn's terms of service. This is a Microsoft-owned companies. It shows what's going on in this country. These aren't really the actions of private companies. These are so-called privately held companies or publicly traded private companies that are doing the work of the government through the back door, silencing speech that the government would never dare censor, could never censor under the Constitution, but use the back door of tech companies to get it done instead. That's even more dangerous than direct government censorship in many ways, because it is a hybrid of corporate power and state power together, doing what neither one of them could do on their own. That's really what this is about. So I'm not worried about me. I'll get my LinkedIn account back, I'm sure. And if not, I'll still be fine. Believe me. I'm doing it because it's a symptom of how deep this cancer has run in our country. And believe me, we will stop at nothing in restoring free speech in our country, in restoring internet freedoms in our country. I've been writing about these issues for several years. I was actually one of the first people in this country to expose the way government was colluding with big tech to get done through the back door. It's dirty work. And so it seems like karma that they've come back and actually punished me for it in the form of censoring my speech about climate change and about China policy. But believe me, I'm not going to stay censored. We're going to get this done through the national revival that we're leading starting next year.
Okay, so my daughter is out here saying hi to everybody at Mount Rushmore, and they all think I'm totally crazy, but they're also probably right. Anyway, my takeaway, he's right. I believe he's right about it being more dangerous to be this corporatist partnership where people are thinking they are getting information that they are actually not getting. I think if you had an overt censorship policy by the government, if you were living in China and you knew that what you were getting was not the full story, that would be less problematic than what we have here, which is people who live naively thinking that they are getting all the information and they are in fact not getting anywhere near that. Also, since we were talking about, in his video, he mentions climate change and the CCP and Biden. Also, as I was mentioning, I don't have the video to show because we're keeping this kind of short, but many of you are probably already aware that RFK Jr. did an interview. Like I said, I believe it was ABC. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but they took out what he said about vaccines and had this little monologue at the end where they're like, we used our editorial control to take out what he said about vaccines because it was all kinds of misinformation. And the reason that I wanted to bring that up too is because it's interesting to hear from both of them that climate change and vaccines were two topics that were just too hot to trot for the powers that be, because those were the two topics that I had a manager overtly say we would never let anybody question on our air as well. And I was talking to somebody at a coffee shop about this morning in South Dakota, a guy actually who moved his family all the way from Colorado out here because his business was shut down by the government during COVID. And so they moved out here. They put their entire life savings into having a wedding venue and it got shut down. And so they moved out here so they wouldn't have to worry about running a business. And we were talking about how these are like religions. And I said, you know, when my boss told me that we wouldn't let anybody question climate change or vaccines on air, he wasn't saying that because he knew otherwise and he just didn't want people to know the truth. It was because he was a true believer about this. So I really believe with a lot of the folks who are making the decisions to shut down speech on these topics, it's because they believe they're doing a public service. Let's go back in time to that Time magazine article. Remember the Time article after the 2020 election that said this cabal saved democracy? That's the way it's often described. And that's the way these people look at it, that they're saving democracy by keeping you from information, in this particular case, that presidential candidates are sharing. Before we go any further, don't forget you can support my work by supporting my sponsors, okay? You're sitting here, you're looking at Mount Rushmore. You know who needs a drink? These guys. Wait, how can I do it here? There we go. They need a drink. They're cold. They're sitting there all winter long. They got tons of people taking pictures of them. They can't move their faces. If anyone needs some AllisonWinePromo.com, it's the guys at Mount Rushmore. Here, hang on. There we go. Can you see them? Well, there we go. 50% off some amazing Malbecs from Argentina, 50% off shipping, high altitude, extremist altitude Malbecs, censored Malbecs because you can't get them at the grocery store. Why would you want to? It's a great way to support my work. Father's Day is coming up. Get your dad a great glass of wine, bottle of wine that also has a purpose, keeps me in business, and helps us finish this road trip to Florida so we don't have to stop in some god-awful state like, trying to think of what would be on the way, like Illinois. Okay, please help us not get stuck in Illinois. We are going to finish up with Mount Rushmore a little bit. I'll be posting some pictures along the way at Locals. So don't forget to go to AllisonMorrow.locals.com. Also, you can be on my editorial board if you're watching there now. Thank you for all the support and hanging with us as we make this cross-country trip. We are going to leave Mount Rushmore today, and we're going to be headed towards the Badlands. So Badlands National Park. That should be very exciting. Okay, so back to wrap up this video. What do I think is the bigger takeaway? Number one, somebody on my Locals said something interesting. I thought it was very true. When the network that decided to cut out the vaccine part with RFK told us they did that, I thought that was very interesting, and he did too. This editorial board member at Locals said, you know, I assume they're going to do that because they do it all the time. What was more interesting was that they told us they're doing it. So that tells me one of two things. Number one, that they knew that the word was going to get out, that they took that part about vaccines out, and so they wanted to get ahead of it and run offense on the editorializing so people can go, see. So he said, yeah, we did it, you know, admit what you're doing and then explain it so that you own the narrative on it. That's what I really think was going on there. You know, that's why I think they told us about it. Another reason could just be because they wanted to do, I don't know, run some kind of illegal interference on it, like because they're afraid maybe his lawyers were going to come after them for taking out that information. So they did that in order to have like a disclaimer, a legal disclaimer. Those are kind of my two guesses on that particular one. But yeah, just to go back to, you know, for some reason, vaccines and climate change, you cannot have a debate on those. cannot have a debate on those. Those are two topics that you only get to have one choice: safe and effective, right? Well, climate change, I guess they would say, is not safe and effective. They would say the opposite, right? Anyway, speaking of safe and effective, the new place we're going to in Florida that we just bought, which we're super excited about, has 2 goats that come with the property, and I'm thinking of naming them Safe and Effective. What do you guys think? I think that's it. I think we've talked about it. You know, like I said, my big takeaway for this is number one, where are the journalists when it comes to caring about knowing who the presidential candidates are? You know, and the fact that you're getting incomplete information about who's running for president. That should bother everybody, even especially the people who say they really don't like these candidates. Because if you really think they're saying something crazy, why wouldn't you want everybody to hear it? That doesn't make any sense to me. And the Donald Trump phenomenon proved to me that it really wasn't necessarily about, like, you know, the public safety or saving democracy or whatever else, because if they can make money off of you, they have no problem with you saying whatever, right? I mean, CNN proved this, but the town hall, they had this whole thing like, we know you're upset. Anderson Cooper had this whole thing. We know you're upset and you don't ever want to watch CNN because we let Trump say all these things on our air. But what do you want to live under a rock? You know, that was basically their statement. And you know what, though? He's actually right in that, you know, it's better to hear the information. I'm not even saying, you know, I'm not taking a side on who's right and who's wrong. I'm just saying it's better to hear what a person says, what a candidate says, especially if you really think they're nuts. Like the worst marketing for them would be to let them talk, right? I'm trying to get the guys in the background. For some reason, I'm having a hard time. There we go. So why not let them hear everything the person has to say? And I think when it comes to the journalists who just don't seem to care about the American people hearing who's actually running for president, it's you know, it seems to me a purposeful attempt to, I'm being very choosy with my words, this is on YouTube, a purposeful attempt to manipulate, okay? Manipulate our government and manipulate what's going on. And yeah, they may sleep at night very well saying that it's because they're just trying to save people from themselves, but let's call it what it is, all right? It's interference. And that Time Magazine article couldn't have said it better. You know, even though they meant it as a celebration and as a brag, and we're all looking at it like, are these people nuts? I just saw somewhere how much money has been invested in Ron DeSantis, like making Ron DeSantis a candidate. Fox News contributor, I can't remember who it was, tweeted about how much money they've spent, or said something, and then I think maybe it was Simon Atiba, the White House correspondent I've had on, he tweeted about the quote, you know, how much money has been spent on putting Ron DeSantis front and center to make him a viable presidential candidate. And Simon wrote, man, I can't believe how much money is spent to put people in front of the voters. You know, do the people really make a choice? Or is it just money at this point, money and power? And it really is a whole coalition of government and media and people who control speech, but also have the money to put people in front of the voters who they want. And, you know, how does this all work, I guess, with, and not to try to be a poli-sci major or anything right now, because I wasn't, but I did, you know, work in the news business for a long time. And I think the fact that there's so much silence about this and you just get called an election denier when you have questions about this stuff. And where is my old industry when it comes to asking the questions about this and being, you know, they're so irate about so many other topics. They don't mind sharing their opinion about so many other topics and just irate about things. But then when it comes to this, it's like, no, nothing to see here. You know, there's no such thing as manipulating elections. I don't know. I think the silence is very telling. Oh, there's my daughter. She's ready to go. All right. Live from Mount Rushmore. Don't forget to support my sponsors. Thanks, everybody, on locals. I'm looking up DeSantis, $200 million. Hall positions him for 2020. Yeah, $200 million. That's how much was spent on him. Okay, we got to go. Thanks, everybody, for your support. And thanks, Lynn, for running the live stream from the truck. And thanks, Jack, for being quiet in the background. And thanks, Lily, for all your help on the live stream. Okay? You want to say bye live from Mount Rushmore?
Hi, let's
say live from Mount Rushmore.
Rushmore.
Okay, see ya.
See ya.
Bye, everybody.